and welcome to My Week in Baseball. I'm your host, Phil Estruth Harrison. You're listening to Season 2, Episode 1. Recent episodes are published in podcast format on Buzzsprout, Spotify, Stitcher, and iHeartRadio, while all episodes are available in a video version on YouTube, so you have many ways to enjoy the show. And you can reach me on Twitter at MyWeekInBball. As always, thanks to Brunjo Productions in Nashville for the intro music created especially for this show. Learn more at brunjo.com. Today, we'll talk about some of the recent moves and free agent signings, including Aaron Judge, Trea Turner, Justin Verlander, and more. Of course, we'll also have a timely limerick and our blast from the past, featuring a Hall of Famer who mastered the art of loading up his pitches. Can you guess who? Stay tuned. Okay, since the 2022 season has ended, and by the way, congratulations to Houston Astros manager Dusty Baker and AL Cy Young Award winner Justin Verlander for bringing a clean championship to Houston, one that is thankfully not tainted this time. And also to the Phillies for a remarkable, fun run and another feather in the cap of GM Dave Dombrowski. Anyway, since we are now past the winter meetings and are eagerly talking about the upcoming 2023 season, we are moving on to Season 2 of this podcast. So thank you for your support over 20 successful episodes during our inaugural season, and welcome back, dear friends, to Episode 1 of Season 2. Now let's get right to it. Okay, a quick summary of the deals that have been made thus far, free agent signings and deals at the winter meetings. My first impression is that they're too much money and they're too many years long. That's the overall thing. And I think what you'll find is that is what you have to do to sign the big players. We're talking about contracts that are 9, 10, 11 years long in many cases for guys that are going to be playing into their age 38, 39, 40 years old at the end of the contract, maybe even 41. Clearly, the teams recognize that the players are not going to play at this level when they're in their late 30s and around age 40. They are not. What they're banking on is that they're going to play extremely well in the short term, in the next 2, 3, 4 years, and that if they can bring a championship home to their city, that it'll be worth it. So it's an interesting strategy. We'll see if that continues in the future. I think that it will. The tables have been set. But let's talk about a few of those key signings. So the big one really is Aaron Judge. He chooses the Yankees out of, well, at least 3 top suitors. And we'll talk about what those options were for him here in just a moment. He leaves money on the table and turns down a longer offer for more total money from San Diego and decides to return to the Yankees. So this is the way I've read about it. It appeared that Aaron Judge was close to signing with the San Francisco Giants near his home where he had grown up and had been a Giants fan. He was on a flight to the West Coast, and I think it looked like he was going there perhaps to announce a deal. And he got a call from Hal Steinbrenner, owner of the Yankees, that saved the day. And basically Hal said, "Hey, Aaron, do you want to be a Yankee? Do you still want to be a Yankee?" And he said, "Yes." And he said, "Okay, so what's it going to take?" And Judge reportedly said, "Well, you offered me 8 years. It's really got to be 9. I'm getting these other offers from these other teams. It's really got to be 9. And he said, "Okay." And so that closed the deal. Interestingly, Steinbrenner was apparently on vacation in Italy, which is at least, plus 9 hours, maybe more, depending on what time zone Judge was in at the time of the phone call. So if you were the owner of a major league team and you had a key player, key moves that you were going to be making, would you be on vacation during the winter meetings? Doesn't it seem like you might wait one more week. I thought that was interesting. Um, but congratulations to the Yankees. I think that's the right place for Judge to be. I mean, he was drafted by them. He's played his whole career for them. And this should take him through to retirement. Part of me would have liked him to seen him go to the Giants, partly because have never been a fan of the Yankees, although Judge is one of those guys who's hard not to like. But on the Giants, he would have really been their one true superstar, and they've been missing that superstar factor for a while. So I think it would have been nice. Anyhow, apparently the three teams that were really in kind of the final run here for Judge were the Yankees, the Padres, and the Giants. So my understanding is that the Giants offered him 9 years. The Yankees had only offered him 8. And so that really was that difference in that phone call where the Yankees said, okay, we'll go to 9. But apparently San Diego offered him 10 years, which would have at $40 million at the same per year amount, which would have made a $400 million contract. Unbelievable. But so he turned down that 10th year to stay in New York. Just crazy numbers. So the final was 9 years and a record-setting $360 million, $40 million a year for Aaron Judge. Good for him. He had a tremendous season and won the AL MVP. Congratulations, Aaron Judge. Another deal the Yankees made that was certainly under the radar compared to this one, but also a really good deal, and in comparison, maybe a steal. And that is they re-signed Anthony Rizzo, their first baseman, who was also a free agent, to a 2-year deal at just $20 million a year. Doesn't that sound like a steal? And it really was a good move because the free agent market for first baseman is really thin this year. Rizzo was one of the very few decent choices, and bringing him back really solidifies that lineup with Judge. So a little under the radar, but I think another key move that will keep the Yankees as a top team going into this next year. So next up, Justin Verlander to the Mets versus Jacob DeGrom to the Rangers. We're talking about two of the very best pitchers in baseball. DeGrom is 5 years younger, so let's keep that in mind in this discussion. Verlander got 2 years at $43 million a year. DeGrom got 5 years from the Rangers at $37 million a year. But here's the thing to me: who got the better deal, and who would you have picked? Verlander's 5 years older, so he'll be going into his age 39 season, I believe. Might even be age 40. I could double check that. DeGrom is 5 years younger. And here's the thing: Justin Verlander started 34 games last year alone and pitched 175 innings. In order to get DeGrom to reach those totals, you have to add up his last 2.5 seasons to get him to 30 plus starts and 175 plus innings. DeGrom has just been injured so much. He's brilliant when he's healthy. He is clearly the best pitcher when he's healthy. I just don't know if I would have made that deal if I'm the Rangers. I actually like the Verlander to the Mets deal better. I don't expect Verlander to win yet another Cy Young Award, but I think he will be very good, and I think he will give the Mets a good number of innings and a good number of starts. It would not completely surprise me if in that 2 years he gives the Mets more starts and more innings than DeGrom gives to the Rangers over his 5-year contract. So we'll see if that prediction holds true or not. If DeGrom is on, it's going to look good. It's going to look like a good deal. If he pitches 5 years and he pitches 150 plus innings a year for the Rangers, he's certainly pitched 200 innings a year, at least a couple of times in the past. He can certainly do it if he can stay healthy. I don't know, but for those two, I like the Verlander deal better. Okay, on to Trea Turner signing with the Phillies. So if you want to spend big money and mortgage your team's future, hiring Dave Dombrowski as your general manager is a really good move. And Dombrowski has done it again, this time signing Trea Turner to an 11-year deal at $27 million a year. Now, Turner is one of the very best shortstops there is, but he will be 40 when the deal is over. Of course, if you look 11 years out, 27 million a year might look like a heck of a deal. Who knows what the salaries are going to be like that far into the future. So maybe that's part of the thinking here too. But Turner is terrific. He has a 302 career batting average. And I know batting average isn't the be all end all like it used to be. 122 career OPS plus, meaning he's 22% better offensively than the average player. And he's been higher than that in several recent seasons. He can steal bases. He's had more than 20 stolen bases every year except the 2020 COVID shortened year. And he is in the 99th percentile for speed in baseball, the 99th percentile. So he's one of the handful of fastest players there are. He also has 20-ish home run power. If you look at his projections over 162 game season, he actually projects to hit more than 20, but you don't play 162 games. I mean, he might play 150. He's not going to actually play 162. Almost nobody does that. But it's more realistic. He's probably going to hit somewhere 18, 19, maybe 20, which for a shortstop with his other abilities is great. Defensively, 2022 was a down year for him. For outs above average, he was in the 47th percentile, kind of right in the middle. Isn't bad, but isn't outstanding. Just a little below average. Though over his career, he's typically in the 70th percentile or higher. So I'm not sure about that, but he's certainly been a very good defensive player thus far in his career. That's going to be a good move. The Phillies are looking strong again as they try to get back to the playoffs. Next up, Xander Bogaerts to the Padres. So Xander Bogaerts, the shortstop from the Boston Red Sox, signs with the San Diego Padres. Now, here's something to consider. The Padres didn't need a shortstop. They have a team already full of shortstops. They had Ha-Seong Kim, their starting shortstop from last year. They have Fernando Tatis Jr., who will be coming back from a suspension, who up to that point had been their starting shortstop. And in a pinch, Manny Machado, who is their third baseman, has actually played more than 200 career games at short. So they're really loaded at short. And it's interesting that the Padres would pick a shortstop. I think the reason they did it is because he was one of the best hitters available left on the market. They had tried to sign Aaron Judge, as we've already talked about, offering him more years and more total money than the Yankees did. And they had also tried to sign Trea Turner, who ended up going to the Phillies. So for Bogaerts, they gave him an 11-year deal, another 11-year deal here at $25.5 million a year. The money and the years are just staggering, deal after deal. So he's going to be good. That lineup is loaded. San Diego is going to have a terrific team again this year. You've also got the Dodgers in that division. I don't really think the Giants are much of a threat at this point. It's probably the Padres and the Dodgers. It's tough out there. It's tough out there in the West. So the last deal there's so many deals that happen. We can't really cover them all. So I'm just picking a few. This last one is going to seem extremely minor compared to those others, and it is. But because I'm a Detroit Tigers fan, I like to bring up some of the moves they're making. So the Tigers traded one of their best relief pitchers, and they do have several good relievers, Joe Jiménez, to the Braves for a pair of prospects. Now, Jimenez had been the heir apparent to be closer for the Tigers up to several years ago. He'd never quite lived up to it, and in my view, had been really quite disappointing until this year. He had a very good year this year with a ERA in the low to mid threes and high velocity pitcher, a good strikeout to walk ratio. So he's been good this past year, but he had only 1 year left before he became a free agent, and the Tigers really are not going to contend this year. So they might as well get something decent for him if they can. And they got a hitting prospect, Justin Henry Malloy from the Braves, and also a left-handed pitcher, Jake Higginbotham. Now, Justin Henry Malloy is looking pretty good as a prospect. He was Atlanta's number 11 prospect, and he comes into Detroit as Detroit's number 7 prospect. He looks promising. He's 22 years old. He plays outfield and third base, 2 places the Tigers could use help. And this past year, he played in 3 different minor league levels. He moved up A, AA, all the way to AAA in 1 year. That's really pretty remarkable. Hitting over those 3 levels in 133 games. He hit .289 with 28 doubles, 17 homers, 81 runs batted in. And this, to me, is the key. In those 133 games, he walked 97 times. 97 times for an OPS of 862. Now, that's really what the Tigers say they're looking for, that with the new management in place, they are looking for players who can control the strike zone. So with hitters, that means taking pitches, looking for the pitch they can hit, and being willing to take a walk. Not so much with the free swingers, which has been a real problem with Detroit's lineup, particularly this last season. He also hit .306 in the Arizona Fall League just recently. So he's looking promising. I'm going to think he's at least a year away from being able to play in Detroit. I would think he would need 1 full season at AAA unless he just mashes it. Maybe he'll get a call up late in 2023 when the rosters expand. That seems likely. But he's probably at least a year away. But that's not bad for trading a relief pitcher who was decent this last year. But I think you're getting pretty good value on that trade. And hopefully one or both of these prospects work out for Detroit. So that's my take on that one. Next, on to something to honk about. The effect of the shift, which is soon to be banned, on defense. This was really interesting to me and something that seems unexpected. It's like an unintended consequence of banning the shift. So the Detroit Tigers second baseman Jonathan Schoop was a Gold Glove finalist this past season at second base. And although he lost out to Andres Jimenez of the Cleveland Guardians, whose behind-the-back double play during the All-Star game still wows me. Jimenez is amazing. Schoop most certainly still had a stellar defensive season. He led all major league players with plus 27 outs above average. He was first in defensive runs above average at plus 22, and he had plus 8 defensive runs saved, which was 4th among American League second basemen. So how does this relate to defensive shifts? Well, in early December, the Detroit News published an article titled, quote, "Ban on shifts could force Tigers to move Schoop off second." They're going to move him off second. He was a finalist for the Gold Glove. He led the league in defensive outs above average. On the surface of it, that sounds kind of crazy, doesn't it? So what's the reason for that is that Schoop relied on his arm to make the plays and not enough on his mobility. In other words, the shift allowed him to play deep in the hole, even onto the outfield grass, which gave him more time to get to balls that if he'd been playing in closer, he presumably would not have gotten to due to his limited range. So we got guys out because he could play deep and use his strong arm to make up for the lack of range with a quick throw to first. Thus, the range issue may prevent him from staying at second, even as a Gold Glove finalist. I think the idea here is that the Tigers might move him possibly to third base, which requires less range and where a strong arm is valuable. He may be a better defensive fit there. And with the departure of Jeimer Candelario for the Tigers, they have no obvious answer to play third base at this time. So that could be a reasonable move. But I think this is the part I really have to honk about. The range argument is strange because his range factor, which is a measure of putouts plus assists per baseballreference.com, Schoop's range factor for 2022 was right about the league average at just over four putouts plus assists per game. He was slightly below average in his range factor per game and slightly above average in his range factor per 9 innings. So about average, not significantly below average, not really below average at all. So I just find that a little puzzling, and I'm wondering, are they overestimating or are they underestimating his range or overestimating the effect that taking the shift away would have on his defensive value at second? I'm not sure. But anyway, the good news for Schoop is that since Detroit doesn't currently have a first baseman, second baseman, or a third baseman, and he can play all three, he is certainly guaranteed a starting job, assuming his offense, which was awful last year, returns closer to career norms. So interesting. I wonder if that will affect other players who use the defensive shift to, it's almost like you're hiding a flaw in your defense by being able to use the shift to take advantage of another asset, in this case, his throwing arm. But I wonder if that will affect other players or if teams will move people around because of that. Okay, enough on Jonathan Schoop. Next up, our blast from the past. This time it's Gaylord Perry, who recently passed away. And there was a lot of news about Perry at that time and a lot of well wishes, considered a great teammate. And I happened to get a link from a friend of mine showing an interview that David Letterman, talk show host David Letterman, had with Gaylord Perry shortly after he retired. And as Letterman introduces him, this is how Letterman introduces him that evening on his show. He says, quote, "The late Red Smith said of my next guest," meaning Gaylord Perry, "of my next guest, he leads all major league pitchers in complete games, innings pitched, and relative humidity." And on the show, Perry openly admits to using Vaseline on the ball. In fact, when he went to the Mariners near the end of his career, their team ERA fell to 3.88 from 4.23, roughly half a run from the year before, as he taught his techniques to Seattle's pitching staff. He never hid the substances in his hat because umpires always checked his hat when batters would say, "Hey, he's doing something, please go out and check." And he never did it in his belt or on his uniform. He felt that those were places it could be discovered. He said that he hid the substance on his face and neck, and that he sweated so much, no one could really tell the difference. But one thing that was interesting in the interview, he said that he frequently would go to his cap, reach up to his cap before a pitch, and then touch the ball. He did not have Vaseline in his cap. He didn't ever have a substance there, but he used it to psych the batters out because they would think, oh my gosh, you went to his cap. That ball is going to do something crazy. And of course, the ball probably would do something crazy, but the illegal substance was not on the cap. And so he was very good at not getting caught. The other thing he said that he was asked by Letterman when he started doing this, and I believe he started with the Mets. And he said something to the effect of, well, it was early in my career and I was the 13th man on a 12-man pitching staff. And so I had to do something. So not only did it save his career, he went on to have a Hall of Fame pitching career. So he pitched 22 seasons from 1962 through 1983. He won 314 games. And he had 303 complete games in 690 career starts. That's 44%. He completed 44% of the games he started. Unbelievable, amazing. And he twice led the league with 29 complete games in a single season. Amazing. By comparison, in the modern era, Justin Verlander, in his 17 seasons, has just 26 complete games in 482 starts for 5%. Just 5% of his games complete compared to 44% for Gaylord Perry. So that's 26 complete games in the whole career for Justin Verlander versus 29 in a single season for Perry. Unbelievable. Now, granted, one big difference would be in the time Perry was pitching, you were almost always pitching with a 4-man rotation. So certainly Perry got more starts and more chances at complete games. Verlander has pitched in the era with 5-man rotations, and even now in the early 2020s, it's not uncommon to at least part of the season go to a 6-man rotation. So certainly you're not getting as many starts or as many chances to complete a game, but still. So we're going to end this episode with a limerick, our baseball limerick that we have every episode, and this time a tribute to Gaylord Perry. So here we go. Gaylord Perry, he knew how to throw. With a loaded ball, he let go. Pitches spinning and dipping, batters swinging and missing. A master on the mound, it is so. All right, so that's all for today, my friends. Thank you for joining us. And please come back next time, because honestly, what can be better than talking baseball? And in the meantime, feel free to reach out to me on Twitter at MyWeekInBball. Thank you for joining us. I'm your host, Phil Estruth Harrison. We'll see you next time on My Week in Baseball.